Stalked by a silent shadow figure ninja guy? This happened a few months ago. I had an argument with my girlfriend, so I decided to do the healthy thing and take a walk to cool it off. Live in a small city and it was around midnight, so not many people around. Most of the walk was normal enough. I calmed down about halfway and just wanted to get home, so I was walking down a sparsely lit street, and a figure with its hood on is standing on the edge of the sidewalk, across the street from me with a parking lot behind him. I'm on the opposite side of the road, but as soon as I noticed him, my heart begins to pump faster and fight or flight kicks in instantly. As soon as he's out of my immediate line of sight, I notice he has silently made it halfway across the street towards me. It freaked me out. He was absolutely silent. I tried to keep him in the corner of my vision, but he was quickly behind me and I still couldn't hear him. I was getting to a line of apartments on my left, and each apartment had small porches with lights on each one. I could see my shadow in front of me. Then the figure is quickly closing in behind me. My mind is racing, I'm walking fast, and I see the shadow within arm distance. This entire encounter has been 5 seconds, 6 at most. I decided fight is my only option, so I twist up the plastic bag in my right hand with a big Gatorade in it, and I'm about to duck and swing high while turning right to surprise him and hopefully catch him off guard so I can run while he gains his stamina. Just then, as I'm coming up to the end of the line of cars parked to my right, a woman holding a baby and a child following her, 4 years old or so, turns a corner from behind an SUV. She made eye contact with me, and I felt instant relief. Still no sound from Shadow Guy behind me. As I'm passing the family, I look to turn behind me and see nothing. Anywhere. I continue looking behind me the entire jog home, but nothing. Nobody. I didn't even see the woman with the kids. I'm not deaf. No hearing problems at all. I know somebody or something was about to attack me that night, but the complete lack of sound from it freaked me out to my core and still bothers me today. So, Shadow Ninja, a few blocks from where I live, let's never, ever meet again. The Silent Guy with a Machete. I have read so many posts here on the sub and realized I have a few of my own. Please bear with me. This happened in Brazil a few years ago. Can't be more than 3 years ago. I've never forgotten this horrifying experience, but I tend to put things away in my head and just move on. My fiance and I lived in Brazil, neither of us being Brazilian. Anyways, we had just bought our first small car and decided to drive around and get to know our surroundings and what was there to offer. We pretty much kept to ourselves, so this was all new. Our son was about 2 years old. We set off on a Monday afternoon and just drive around with areas with lots of nature. We both love fishing, and we decided we would find out if there were any fishing or camping spots around the area so that in the future we could do what we both love. We are very aware of the dangers and very careful with our little boy. So this done during the day, on a Monday afternoon, what could possibly go wrong? We stop at a gas station and ask a guy there if he knows any of the fishing spots in the area. He explains and off we go, very excited. We find this beautiful rural road out in the middle of nowhere. Many houses along this road, but all entrances completely closed off with security and high walls. Not one other car on this gravel road, just us. We go deeper and deeper and deeper, and eventually I see this beautiful lake on the right. We pull over and stop to stretch our legs, kind of. I take my son out of the car and my fiance also gets out. I'm just looking through the fence of this lake with ducks. More like a pond, I guess. I'm showing my son the duckies, etc., etc., etc. However, this pond is fenced off, so we're just walking along the side. It's very quiet and peaceful. But I start getting a strange feeling. And I feel like we need to get back to our car and carry on with our drive. We speak English, so obviously our voices haven't heard, because just as I turned to go back to the car, my fiancé had a look of horror on his face, and he just said, "Get in the car." I looked, and there out of nowhere was a guy coming towards us, very slowly, swinging a machete. My heart dropped. I felt I couldn't breathe. I ran a few steps towards my son, who was still watching the duckies, and grabbed him. Not a word was said. We all jumped in the car, and he was a few feet away, and when I got my boy in the back seat and turned to look forward, this guy had disappeared as swiftly as he had appeared. I remember after we had left, we just looked at each other, and we were like, what the fuck just happened? I know my fiance was in total shock, and he was a big guy, not scared of anything, so I'm very glad to say we never got to meet the strange guy with a machete. Trapped like a caged animal just waiting to die. In early 2007, I was freshly 18 and newly married, living in Fort Polk, Louisiana with my husband, who was training at Fort Benning. I was born and raised in Alaska, so living in the continental US was a vastly new experience for me. My husband had a weekend off, though he was not allowed to leave the base, so he bought a Greyhound bus ticket for me to visit him and meet the soldiers he became friends with. I'd never been on a Greyhound bus before, but I was excited to drive through the South and see new places, I guess, and have my own little adventure, if you will. Sir, plenty of creeps bothered me on the bus and at the stations, but I still had interesting conversations, met new people, and generally enjoyed the experience. Regardless of the time, each station we stopped at was open and offered food, outlets for charging, and bathrooms. So we arrived in Columbus, Georgia, at about 2 a.m. I expected the station to be open. It wasn't. Everyone else who ended their journey there had a ride waiting for them, and suddenly I was completely alone outside a locked building in the middle of downtown Columbus, full dark and terrified. I didn't know what to do, and my phone was nearly dead from the last long leg of travel. I thought about walking to a gas station, but I had no idea which direction to go, and I couldn't see any nearby lit buildings. I truly expected the station to be open, thinking I would stay there for a bit while my phone charged and I had something to eat and could have access to a phone book so I could call a cab. All I had was an old sign hanging on the side of the building with incomplete phone numbers for taxi companies. The numbers had faded, been scraped off and defaced. There was only one complete phone number, and it was handwritten in a Sharpie at the top of the list. Better than nothing, right? Wrong. I called the number and a guy answered, casual and sleepy, asking who I was. I apologized, explaining I was trying to call a cab, when the guy perked up immediately and said, "Oh yeah, that's me, I'm on the way." My phone died 10 minutes after I made the call, and it was another 15 minutes before the guy showed up in a traditional-looking yellow taxi. I noticed the cab wasn't marked, no logo, number, rates, anything, but it had that taxi light thing on the top, and in my young, naive mind, seemed totally legit. He waved me over. I got in and asked him to take me to Fort Benning, finally feeling some relief. The doors auto-locked, and I will never forget the first thing he said to me. He was silent until we got on a main road, and said, "Did you really think it was a good idea to call a number written in Sharpie?" I froze. In retrospect, no. It wasn't the best idea I've ever had, but I had so few options at the time, and didn't want to be stranded in a huge foreign city in the middle of the night. I didn't know what else I could have done. After a minute, I tried to laugh it off and hoped he wouldn't notice I was shaking. I reached for my phone before remembering it was dead, and realized that if something happened to me, no one would know if I'd even made it to Georgia. Staring at me in the rearview mirror, the driver told me what was going to happen. "There's no use in getting to Benning this early. The Post Hotel isn't even open. Drive around with me for a while, hang out, and I won't even charge you." I told him no thanks. I really need to get to Fort Benning right away. "Nah," he said, and that was that. We drove to a worn-down apartment complex, where he told me he was picking up a regular to keep me company. I didn't reply. What could I even say? I wasn't raised religious, but I was praying to God for some kind of miracle. Out came a woman who looked a bit like a cliché prostitute. Tube top, mini skirt, smudged mascara, and an unlit cigarette hanging from her lips. Short but rather bleached hair. Pockmarked face, cheap purse. I have no idea who or what she truly was, but she got in the front passenger seat and lit her cigarette. She turned to look at me. "Don't worry, he's cool. We're cool." Uh-huh. That definitely helped, I guess. I never considered jumping from a moving vehicle before, but even if I wanted to, the back doors were child safety locked, and I couldn't open them. Trust me, I tried. I was trapped like a caged animal, just waiting to die. I felt so stupid, so foolish, sitting in the back seat of the cab, no idea what to do, and no idea what was going to happen to me. I tried to rationalize it, downplaying the situation in my mind. I was too afraid and frozen to actually do anything anyways. As we were driving around, the girl was telling me about the driver, how he was ex-military, and had just started this cab business, what a down-to-earth fun guy he was, and how lucky I was to be picked up by him, how I was cute and young and everything was cool. Her words were a bit slurred, and I knew she was either drunk or high on something. I didn't really want to know. We pulled outside a small blue house sometime later, about an hour before the break of dawn, and the driver told the girl to keep an eye on me while he went inside. I'm in full panic mode, the suspense of making it so much worse, so the girl offered me a cigarette to calm my nerves. I wasn't a smoker, but I said yes. She got out of the cab and opened my door, stumbling a bit before sitting on the curb and lighting another cigarette. She lit mine as I sat next to her, and I started thinking about whether or not I could outrun her with my heavy backpack and how long the driver would be inside for. Without me asking, the girl told me the driver was inside showering in preparation. I asked what he would be showering and preparing for, and she just kept repeating how cool he was, how much fun we were going to have, and how cute I was. Then she said, Ranger cab, because he was like a ranger or something. Or maybe that was his dad. He's a good looking guy, military muscles. God finally answered my prayer when the girl slumped over and passed out in the grass. I saw the track marks on her arms and guessed it was heroin, and apparently the driver was inside taking a shower and wasn't about to come back in the next few moments. I grabbed my backpack and ran like hell. I don't remember exactly what happened after I started running. I took off. I know it was fast, as my feet would carry me, and that I didn't dare stop to catch my breath even. 1 minute I was sprinting for my life, lungs on fire, and then I was trudging along with tears in my eyes as I walked through the Fort Benning gate with my military spouse ID, asking how to get to the base hotel. Honestly, I wish I knew how I got there. I was in deep survival mode, and didn't stop to process any of it until I made it to my room. I don't know if anyone gave me a ride, if I even followed a map or what. I've never blocked a memory out like that before, or ever again. I told my husband everything when I finally saw him. He didn't believe me. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have believed me either, to be honest. His lack of trust made me think no one would take me seriously, so I never went to the police. I still had the number I dialed saved in my call history. I knew the girl called it the Ranger cab. What I didn't have was the confidence or support to report it. Sometimes I think back to that day and wonder what would have happened if the girl didn't let me out of the cab, if she hadn't passed out on the ground, if the driver never stopped for a shower. It's one mystery I don't need the answer to. He is probably not a medical student. I moved to North Central Florida a month ago, and this is the story of my very first encounter with the infamous Florida man. I work in a molecular biology lab that occasionally requires very odd hours because I need to hit certain time points for my experiments. On this particular day, a few weeks ago, I had to go in for half an hour at 3:30 a.m. for a poorly planned 12-hour time point. My car was about 500 yards away from my building, at the other end of a fairly well-lit pedestrian-only courtyard between my building, the medical school library, and the nursing school. Layout becomes relevant later. I go in, do my thing, and start walking back to my car. When I'm about a quarter of the way there, I notice a man walking towards me. From the cross street my car is parked on, he's weaving back and forth a bit aimlessly, looking at his feet. I contemplate whether to cross the courtyard away from him, with a tendency of paranoia in my mind, before I decide he breaks into a run straight for me, a frantic, flailing arms, flat-out sprint as though something is even chasing him. He's in the shadow under some trees, so more or less the only detail I can see is the white of his eyes, and he's making direct eye contact with me. Immediately panicked, I duck sideways to put a brick embankment between us, and start scrabbling for the pepper spray on my keychain. When he's still about 30 feet away, he skids to a halt in front of the med school library. He tries to open the door and then repeatedly is unsuccessful. He swipes a card through an ID scanner, also unsuccessful, appearing to pay no attention to me at all. Okay, just a heavily intoxicated weirdo who really wants to get into the library, I guess. Us grad students are kind of a socially disastrous bunch, so I shrug it off and continue on my way. The ID scanners are quite finicky and require you to swipe the card upside down compared how'd you expect, because they don't read the MAC script. So when I get into my car and lock the doors behind me, which I do religiously, thank goodness, I look back to see if he's still trying to get in, intending to drive up to the curb and attempt to instruct him to do so. Instead, he is sprinting across the street towards my car. He just short of touching my back door driver's side door with his stomach at most 2 inches away from it, and stares out into the darkness over my trunk. That was quite enough for me for one night, so I start my car and rev the engine. He jumps violently as though genuinely startled, and heads quickly towards the only other car in the parking lot. As I'm about to turn onto the street, I hear a click, and look over to see him trying to open my passenger side door. He then raps on my window. I creep it open the smallest amount, and stare silently at him. He opens his hand to display 15 to 20 small Valley gift cards from various stores. No thank you, I say, no response. Silent staring. I roll up the window and he shoves the cards into his pocket with an air of annoyance to start rapping on it again. Come on, it's for lab, he says. I ignore him and pull out. He begins banging hard with a closed fist on the side of my car. I'm just trying to get back to lab, he shrieks at the top of his lungs, trotting after me into the street as I peel away over speed bumps as though trying out for a stunt job in John Wick. Thanks, creepy gift card salesman. You made me scratch the shit out of my bumper.